This is Storytellers and Storysellers live on tape. You're listening to Vineet Kanabar on the IVM Podcast Network. Every episode on this show, we talk to folks from the creative and business side of entertainment. And on this episode, we've got a great, very interesting guest from the world of theatre. Please say hello and give a rousing storytellers. Welcome to Faezeh Jalali. Hi, Faezeh.
Hello.
I'm going to do a quick introduction. I'm going to read from an article about you that came out a couple of years ago. A decade ago, Faezeh Jalali was named by a magazine as a face to watch out for. She lives up to the prediction and is today among the finest directors on the stage, winning awards and appreciation for 070707 and Shikhandi, both plays with strong social messages and a uniquely energetic style of presentation. Faezeh, that's a great introduction for anyone, and I just thought I'll read that out to introduce you to our listeners. We're talking here in context of your new play, Strictly Unconventional, that comes out this week. Actually, we're recording this on the 6th of July. It comes out on the 7th. And I want to unpack that introduction just a little bit, right? So, stuff that really stood out to me was awards and appreciation for plays with a strong social message and a uniquely energetic style of presentation. I'll come to the strong social message because that's deep. Where does this uniquely energetic style of presentation come from? Tell us a little bit more about your style.
I don't know. Whoever's written that article, first of all, please share that article with me. Because every time I look for stuff about myself, I'm like, there's nothing. So I think what the writer has mentions is, I think my style is sort of, when you talk about theatre, though I don't necessarily agree with that sort of box, but it's more physical theatre in the sense that I start from the body in terms of the storytelling. Like I feel like a lot of words can explain a lot, but the body has another text that it kind of gives to the audience on a subtler level, which the audience is watching. And the audience may or may not be conscious of that, but they're absorbing what your body is telling them right now also. Like you're watching me, I'm watching you. So on a very subconscious level, we are communicating with each other beyond the words that we're speaking. And so I feel that theatre is that medium. Like in film, you can close up and you can only focus on a certain thing. But theatre, because it's sort of like a wide shot all the time, you don't know what people are catching. So the body is always telling a story beyond what the text is. And I think either you can decide that the body can be contradicting the text or going with the text. And so I work a lot with my actors when they say energetic style, it means because I myself am such a physically active person, and I try to train my actors also in a very physical way, very athletic way. So we have like a vocabulary that for 777 and for Shikhandi, we kind of trained for over like many months. On the other hand, Strictly Unconventional is quite conventional in its form, not in the stories, I think. But the form is quite conventional in the sense that we haven't worked with the body as much as I worked with Shikhandi and 777, and that's kind of a new thing for me because I always start from the body and I really push my actors on a very athletic level. Like people they come late because they want to miss warm up. So, but
that
I have
me at
also
football practice.
Correct. So, I don't know, but yeah, like that kind of where people want to but I think the actors who do go through it and the people who like a lot of, like Shikhandi, we trained for 6 months. We learned different forms, we trained a lot, and the actors also felt a difference in their stamina and things like that. And when you have 2 shows a day of a show that is completely tuck, there's no breather. You need to have that kind of stamina, mental, physical. You need to have that focus, which I think, as a watcher, what you get is the final sort of result of it. But that final result is from a lot of the training. So I think energetic style is because I am a very physically active person, and I put a lot of importance to physical intelligence of people, of human beings, of actors, to know that muscle memory. So, like for example, Shikhandi is a play that we've been doing for over 60 shows, and there's a different, for the actors who've been with it from the beginning, there's a different kind of physical memory, and the actors who are joining later, there's a different memory. But there is, I don't think we give enough thought to physical intelligence, and that is something that is also a communicating factor. And not to say, there are different styles. People are very much to a lot of text based theater, and of course there's great texts that have been written and stuff like that. But because I like to work with the body, and I like the storytelling that happens with the body and the actor, and primarily for me theater is that style. It's a very physical form.
For sure.
So when people say, oh, you do physical theater, I get a little bit upset, because theater is a physical form. What else? I mean, not upset, not like, but I feel like it's just a box. It's a box that you don't need, because theater is a physical form. It is.
Right.
Otherwise you're probably doing radio, for example. But
Right.
even in radio, you are giving a physicality to the voice.
Yeah, for sure.
In a sense. So for me, physical theater, it seems like a redundant kind of name tag. It's theater because theater is physical, and it's how you employ the body. Either you want to work a lot vocally and delve into the text and the depth of the text, or work with the body and the text and really look at what the body can communicate about the text. So that's where I like to, that's the space I come from. So it's really pushing the body to do a lot of the storytelling.
Love it. I mean, what I got out of that is you focus on the entirety of the toolbox that an actor has available, as opposed to the tips, the tricks of the camera, which other media tends to employ, right? I see an analog there, and I want to follow up to ask you about the social impact of the stories that you're telling, or the social consciousness of the stories that you're telling. At a macro level, do you think theatre still remains a tool for that kind of social change? And is that why you do it? I just want to understand if the analog that I'm seeing is actually there, or do you look at it differently? To simplify, the question I'm asking is just the way that you see the body as part of the toolbox for expression. Do you see theatre as part of that toolbox for society? And is that where the social consciousness of your plays comes from?
Vineet, see, if I could make films, I would do that with films also, but I'm not a filmmaker.
Right.
So my theater has to express the things that I want to express. It's like I oftentimes, people say, oh, why did someone create XYZ thing? It's so offensive. I don't think any artist is here to create to offend. Every artist is creating to express. And so you're going to express from your experience, from your knowledge, from your spaces of understanding. And so a lot of my work also, so 777, for example, is a story about an Iranian woman who kind of defended herself from a man who was trying to rape her. And we kind of created a piece with 7 women and 3 men based on her prison diaries. Now, of course, that is a very dramatic piece, and that is sort of taking somebody else's experience and trying to sort of translate it to a physical form and communicate it on stage, that this is a story that we want to tell. It's somebody else's, but when you read it, you feel it so personally. It's like she's sitting in front of you and telling you her story, and you're like, I have to, you're like compelled to want to tell this story. And there are many levels of what the things that she talks about in the story, about being a woman, about being, there's a, the man who was trying to rape her was in the government. And so it became a whole political thing. And many things, and about how the other women in the prison who were of much lower classes than her, and how being in prison made her realize that it doesn't matter which part of, where you're
Your
from,
class location
together.
sort of doesn't matter.
Yeah. And the fact that she also talks about things like, when people were hanged, when women were hanged, so, like the day before they were spending time together, and the next day that person is gone, and then everything goes back to normal. And just like bits that you just feel, oh my goodness, there's so much in that and from a 19-year-old who sort of aged for 7 years in prison, till 26. So at 26, she sounds like an old 80-year-old woman almost.
Right.
There's so much wisdom. There's so much like suddenly experience that has come to her that she, at 19, she was so naive. And that's what we also try to show in the play. How she, the wisdom sort of that came to her, the understanding, the knowledge. And I actually did meet her mother in Tehran.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was also kind of like a strange meeting, but I'd been on, chat with her on Facebook. As you know, like Facebook in Iran is also banned, and somehow we managed to meet her and talk to her, which was amazing. It was just that one day, like an hour, I met her, and it was I can't even. I mean, it just
Yeah.
feels like it was from another time. So like and then we have Shikhandi, which is talking about gender, sexuality, and using a character from the Mahabharata and completely everything, and sort of turning it around on its head. And every character that you know in the Mahabharata, I look at it differently. From a different point of view, from my point of view. Again, it's like I said, it's not to offend, it's to express what I think I want to say with that character. Like there are some characters in the Mahabharata that are really tiny,
Right.
but they come and they're there. And why don't we know about? Why don't we know enough about them? Or I would like to know more about them.
Right.
So Shikhandi as a trans character, and what that means, and it's sort of contemporizing the context so you can understand it, but putting it and setting it in the world of the Mahabharata, so that the storyline of the Mahabharata is where we are sort of taking it, but really contextualizing what it means to be genderqueer, or what this person was struggling with. And so I think my my regular tendency would be to kind of use humor to sort of look at the dark aspects of what society, the oppressions in society, or look at the. Basically, I just want to say I'm always for the underdog.
Right.
So it's for me, it's always like there will always be the stereotype bigot. I find religion very interesting. So in Bone of Contention, which happened in 2019, it was about a housing society where there are 4 different communities. There's a Hindu, Muslim, Parsi, and a Christian family. And a crow drops a bone in the Jain family's house,
Right.
and then that sparks a whole controversy. It's farcical. It's you're laughing at it the whole time.
Sounds hilarious. Yeah.
And there's a didi who is made to pick up that bone because it's too dirty and keep throwing it into somebody else's house, from the Hindu family's house to the Christian families, from the Christian family to the Parsis, to the Muslims. Everybody is blaming each other, and basically on a very deep level, we all hold these prejudices. So we might be living in these cosmopolitan societies, but deeply we are ready to blame another person, another community.
Yeah.
Because if you look at people individually, you will not have those prejudices.
Right.
But if you look at a community, you can have those prejudices. You
And
know what I mean?
It's really
So-
good for us. Like, just be like, yeah, Parsis ऐसे ही होते हैं.
Yeah.
And
Parsis are exactly. So even Bone of Contention, it was a complete out and out farce, but there was a lot of social commentary in that. And because I'm very moved, I would say very inspired by religion. And what religion,
wait.
how people
That's
have
a phrase. I mean, that's a phrase.
inspired to use religion. No, I'm not religious at all, but I just, every time I see people, actually I don't believe in anything, but every time I see
That's
people
another
of different
phrase.
religions of holding on to ideas or things that they are saying are religious or traditional or whatever, and if you just ask them why, there is no answer, but because it is part of our tradition,
Right.
or this is how it used to be. There is no I feel sometimes logic or science or any thought behind why are we following this particular thing. Like, for example, if a crow drops a bone, you can just throw it.
Yeah.
Right? That's a simple fact. But you will not touch it. You will call somebody who you think is of a lower caste or class to touch it, and you will not touch that person. And that person is made to do the bigger crime of passing it on to somebody else.
Wow.
So that's it.
Totally.
So for me, it's religion is a very, very interesting aspect, and a lot of my other plays that I wrote over the pandemic have a lot of have a lot of religious. I don't want to say, and it's not to bring down religion. It's actually to question us about what are we actually believing in? What do you believe in? Why? For what?
It's an inquisition of the stories we ascribe so much belief in, right? And at the end of the day, if you really take a rationalist view of religion, it's the stories that have been passed down or codified to the extent that now they've become structures that you believe in, right? Instead of just, they've gone from stories to scripture. And then I think it's very interesting. And I love the way that you put it, right? That you may not believe in religion, but you're inspired by it to look at human life through the prism of the beliefs that religion inspires. Like exactly what you said, your religion may hold touching a bone as a religious crime, but you're willing to commit what is actually a social crime by getting someone else on board and then asking them to, which is, like you said, completely farcical, right? And I think there's, the macro environment in India currently notwithstanding, I think it does come from we do have a rich tradition of playwrights questioning the dogma that religion sort of imposes on you, while still leaving space for faith and belief as sort of purer, higher order concepts that you need to subscribe to live. But there are these, again, the dogma is obviously there to be challenged. And I love the way that you talked about Bone of Contention. I hadn't read about that play. Sounds like a riot, to be honest.
It's quite a riot, actually. But just coming back to that, again, the basic thing for me is when I create work, I'm creating it so that we can look at ourselves and laugh at us, because it's an expression of what I think society is, versus me trying to say, oh, this person is bad, that person. Everybody has their idiosyncrasies, everybody has these things that we're holding on to for no real reason and not questioning it. For example, like Shikhandi for me, Shikhandi is a play that, first of all, I love the Mahabharata. I love it. I feel like it's a text that is so rich and has so much left to interpretation.
Is Shikhandi your favorite character out of it, or is there another one?
I actually, Shikhandi, but also Eklavya. And I remember reading the Mahabharata and crying when I read Eklavya's story. So actually, Eklavya is the second part of the trilogy of the Mahabharata that I'm writing. Trilogy, matlab, just in my big. But also because I want the idea of class also is I feel strongly about it. So for me, then Eklavya's story also about why was this tribal boy not accepted to being completely skilled and everything. And of course, there are people who will say, oh, this is all westernized thinking and all that. But for me, it's a question for me. Why was Eklavya not given that? You could see the talent. So there are lots of, so everything that I do, I feel...
Eklavya, sorry, but just the juxtaposition of his class denial and then, exalting him for cutting his thumb off and being like, hey, this is Guru Dakshina. I mean, that whole juxtaposition, I mean, there's so much to find there. I love it.
Exactly. And it's like, he's like the epitome of good discipleship. When you look up Google and stuff and you're like, boss, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Because why would you do that to anybody? Why would anybody have to do that for anybody? You know what I mean? So absolutely. I just feel, so I felt very, very strongly for Eklavya also. Because I remember actually crying and then closing the Mahabharata for that moment and saying, I can't read anymore because it hurt me so, I don't know why, but it hurt me so much. And so Eklavya is one story that, like I said, so Shikhandi was one and then Eklavya. So with Shikhandi and Eklavya, again, my physical form will be much stronger in the storytelling versus, say, Strictly Unconventional, which is opening tomorrow, which is a very much more modern, urban sort of look at relationships. And the one thing that was very strongly in my head is how even on stage or on screen, we accept very easily cis-het relationships, cisgender hetero, visually to watch. Like two men holding hands or two women sort of kissing becomes a little bit exotic. And it's like if in a film you want to show lesbian or a bisexual person, you have to show them making out. You have to show them having some sort of sexual thing. When it's like you wouldn't do that necessarily if you're just talking about a cis-het person
Regular
or
relationship,
cis-het coupling. Yeah, you would, if those two people were holding hands, it's good enough, right? And then again, on that spectrum, there is a lot of wrong things like stalking and all, which I won't go into. But so for this particular play, Strictly Unconventional, I was looking at how we look at family structure, how we look at coupling. I mean, again, my style is humorous, but it's really present stories and for visually giving representation to non-cis-het, not only cis-het coupling, for example. So it's not only LGBTQI relationships, there are some cis-het, but each of the stories has their own little, so there are 6 short plays and each of them have a story about like unconventional way of choosing life or living that we may not as an audience be used to seeing or hearing.
Let me quickly recount the 6 stories that you have there. There's a 15-minute piece about a gay man and a polyamorous woman who spend their lives together. There's a story of a marriage in which a woman is sexually dissatisfied, a straight couple who think they are perfect, but hey, there are no perfect relationships, a lesbian couple with both members dealing with mental health issues, an older ex-pilot married to a woman who he has no love for. And the one line that sounds most appealing to me, it's a talk show where a thoughtless host ungraciously, intrusively questions a trans couple. I say that appeals to me most because, hey, I'm a talk show host who hopefully isn't put in the same position anytime soon. I'm going to go into a quick break. On the other side, we will talk to Faezeh about how writing happened to her, what her process is to develop plays, and what she expects Strictly Unconventional to do to move audiences. Stay with us. Great conversation with Faezeh Jalali on Storytellers and Storysellers. We'll be back after these messages. And we're back. This is Storytellers and Storysellers. I'm Vineet Kanabar. Who else did you expect? You were in the middle of an episode. We've got Faezeh Jalali on this episode. They're having a riot of a conversation. Faezeh, I want to ask you about how writing really happened to you and how you sort of picked at this rich vein of storytelling, right? And again, you've got a body of work that speaks for itself. I read while I was putting together my points of view for this, I read somewhere that you'd gone away to college. I think it was Wisconsin, if I'm not mistaken. You were also doing a dental major while studying performing arts, which is a combination that I'd never thought of before. I think you were pre-med. Yeah, she has great teeth. She's very happily showing us. But yeah, I mean, first of all, help us understand that, right? Like, how does liberal arts happen with pre-med? I mean, I'm glad that you chose liberal arts because that's been the gain. But tell us a little bit more about that time of life.
So that time of life into writing, sure. So I was in undergrad in Wisconsin because when I finished science at Xavier's here, I had no idea what I wanted to do in life. And I don't think that at 17 or 18, anybody, at least when I was younger, you don't know. Even now, I don't know. But the thing is that it felt like going into a medical school immediately would not be the right thing because I really loved theater. So either I would have been like a physicist because I loved physics and I wanted to do a lot more physics also. But I wanted to do dentistry for no particular reason except that I just thought I wanted to be a better dentist than my orthodontist. I wanted to be an orthodontist, actually.
Right.
So imagine at 18, you're like making this decision that I want to be a dentist because I want to be better than my dentist. So obviously, if I'd been a dentist now, I would have been suffering. So the 4 years in liberal arts college gave me the choice and the provision to kind of do these multiple things. So I was a runner, I ran cross country, I did my science classes, which just prerequisites for like dental school. So it was just pre-med. And a lot of it we had already done here. So I don't really count it as anything. But by my second or third year, I was like, what am I actually doing? Do I really want to be stuffing my fingers in people's mouths? I couldn't imagine my life
when
like
you put
that.
it like that.
Yeah, I was just like, Faezeh, just think about this a little bit better. You can't be doing it for revenge. And obviously, I was majoring in theatre, acting and directing. And so I was just like, and every time I came back to Bombay, I was like, yeah, I want to come back to Bombay and I want to do theatre, from what I'm learning and stuff like that. And the problem, particularly, and that will take me into that conversation about my Russian teacher who told me stuff, was that a lot of my education was very, very Western, and a lot of the theatre
Right.
that I did had a lot of Western style. So I did a lot of dance, I did a lot of theatre stuff that was very Westernized, and it's great because it actually, I at 17 or 18, when you go out and you're by yourself, you learn so much, and your brain just switches. But also in my master's degree at the University of Knoxville, Tennessee, we did a semester where we went to Russia, Italy, France, and Germany, and we had this Russian teacher who was like, we had to do something with Lady Macbeth, like we had to create our own version of her. And he was like, Faezeh, and I did something very like, very like Western, and I was like, he's like, you could have done anything, and you come from two such rich cultures. Why isn't that in your performance? Because my training had been so Western, and
Right.
that got me really thinking. And that's why when I came back, I was really, really interested and desperate to learn more of the Indian forms, and which is why right now I'm also doing a diploma in Kalaripayattu.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So just coming to that, so I did my undergrad and then my master's. And in undergrad, I soon realized that dentistry was not for me. I didn't want to go that way in life. And it was also like, I couldn't imagine it. Like, I couldn't imagine it. I was like, well, what was I thinking? And so when I applied for my master's, luckily I gotten on a full scholarship to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. So I went in and I, again, did my master's in performance, and it was very eye-opening. And writing at that point was not something I was paying attention to at all. Like, not even directing. I was like, I want to be an actor. In your
Right.
20s, you're like, yeah, I want to learn. Now I feel like don't like my friends were like, when I did a play right now, I was like, I really want to direct and write. I don't want to act so much. No, I can act in film and web series because they pay, and that
Sure.
will run my theater.
Sure.
So I don't want people who are in that to not cast me. But the idea, so the writing happened like particularly because a lot of the work that I was doing was in the devising space, where you're just taking a seed of an idea and kind of working on it on the floor. You take a poem or an idea, like, so Shikhandi was just a character that I wanted to work on. And in 2010 I went to Germany for a 3-month like movement and dance workshop, and I wanted to work on this particular story. So we had to create a devised piece based on whatever we wanted. And so Shikhandi was the seed of the idea, and I created a 20-minute one-woman show around the same story that is now an 8-person show.
Right.
So devising, in a sense, gives you that you're not necessarily writing immediately, but you're writing like, oh, this is the episode, or this is the beat that happens. Then I do this, then I do this. And I also used to, since 7th grade, write my diaries, just spill things out. And I didn't realize that it was actually something. But in 2013, I say this, I had a breakup, like a massive, like after 7 years of being together, breakup. And so like, I became rockstar Farhan. Not Farhan. Is it Farhan Akhtar is rockstar? Ranbir, yeah, Ranbir. So I became that. Like, I became prolific suddenly.
Right.
Suddenly I was like, I took my Shikhandi 2010 notes, and I started writing, and I wrote in verse, and I was writing a lot of poetry that time. Because, with a broken heart, what are you going to do? Write poetry only. So I wrote like pages and pages, and I wrote a whole play. And that's how writing happened to me. So when you say writing, I'm not a disciplined technical writer. I write on a whim, literally on a whim.
Right.
And I write when I feel inspired, or I'm in a place where I can just sit and write. So in 2000, like when during the lockdown also, for some reason the lockdown happened when I was in Panchgani at a friend's house, and then there I wrote 2 plays.
Right.
So again, that was also after another heartbreak. So it's just become a pattern.
So are you praying for heartbreaks at this point? I mean, I'm joking.
No, but I'll still write. I can still be inspired. But
Sure.
there are lots of things that, like lots of stories that I read, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so fun. It's not fun actually because it's a piece of news article. But like sometimes people do such absurd things. But for them, that moment is very true, right?
Right.
Like there was once this guy who said he's going to jump off something because Uddhav and Raj were not talking or something like that. So it's like who? Wow.
What are
These
your
amazing
motivations? I
people.
want to understand your head better. Right now. Like, love it. Let me ask
So
you.
I'm just like,
oh, sorry. Go on.
yeah.
No,
Sure, no, go ahead.
No, go
No,
on.
so I'm saying writing for me is quite. I'm not somebody who you can say, okay, Faezeh, we will commission you to write a play about, you know, animals or the environment necessarily. It's something that I feel inspired by stories from people or something I read or someone has told me, and it just like, or something, and then I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like this person is amazing, or this relationship is amazing, and then I try to then find my story in that story.
Love it. And does it come out as sort of formed prose, or do you write maybe poetry or verses and then develop it? I'm just trying to draw analogs with the sort of more well understood development process in that sense. You want me to repeat?
So I just say no, because I'm like people. I don't know. I think other writers who are more disciplined and all have a structure. I kind of go with a lot of verse writing. Like
Right.
I write in verse quite a lot because I find it very easy to write like that, and usually it gives me a structure.
Sure.
It gives me a structure for something that I want to write, and then I kind of get the storyline in it, and then I see, okay, fine, well, I can expand on it in verse, or then I can just convert it into prose. But because also the thing is, I don't know, for me, theater, like when I write a script, there is an inherent rhythm to text that again, when you have that in your head and you're performing, the audience is also absorbing that on a very micro level. Like if there's that, you're with it without knowing that you're with it.
Oh, yeah,
And
for
if it's
sure.
off, you'll feel it, right?
Yeah,
you
yeah.
don't have to be a musician or anything like that, because there is a rhythm in life. And I feel like there is some sort of, in my head, there's always some sort of like rhythm to a text. And so it really, like, of course, particularly the poetry, but even in the prose, there is some sort of rhythm in which the text is spoken. And me as a person, again going back to that article, the energetic style is my own, like, mental and physical timing is a lot faster than when I see other people. So I feel like I'm always on this like ta 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 ta. And I've also over time had to figure out that, okay, Faezeh, you are at like 100 miles per hour and people can't be there.
Right.
So I've also tried. So oftentimes my dialogue also, I just want it to be like this. And there are people, of course, there's other kind of writing which is very slow and
Right.
very like measured and very,
Unpeeling
full.
an onion very slowly, like that.
Yeah, very slowly. But mine is very tuck, 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 tuck. And for me, it's very, very bothersome if anything happens. Life happens slowly also, I'll be like, come on. I've been a runner for freaking 25 years. So
Right.
it's kind of like, everything. So that's also one thing with
Getting
Strictly
whiffs of very
Unconventional.
type A personality here. Just say.
Really?
Yeah? No?
Really?
A little bit. I mean,
I wouldn't.
the drive to achieve the general fast-pacedness, maybe impatience. I don't know. That's not your shit. Joking.
No, you're right. It's quite type A. And I try very hard. I mean, I'm trying to kind of breathe and be, like a little bit calmer and things like that. So yeah. So I guess I guess for me the text is always in some sort of rhythm, and it has some sort of beat to it. Even if you're not hearing a beat,
Yeah.
but there is a musicality that I like to have in a text. I think it's important for a text to have. So even if you're not doing a musical, I'm not a big fan of musicals, but like just prose, just has to have some sort of, which the audience may or may not fully know that they are experiencing. They may not know, but on a very deep level, they are
They
knowing.
grasp it. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
totally get it. I think that's what also makes you, I'm sure, a great director to work with, because you understand the unsaid aspects of performance as well. And these are things that I'm sure go a long way in crafting the experience of Faezeh Jalali play. Let me ask you this, right? And again, I'm not theater historian, but some of my friends are deeply into theater. I hear from them that the past few years there's been a revival of interest. There has been a little bit more attention to the arts, a little bit more money coming in as well. Again, all hearsay. You may choose to be like, Vineet, all your friends are lying. None of that is happening. But what I really want to ask you is, for the past 10 years or so, in the information age, the Facebook age now, what are some movements within the theater industry that you've seen that have got you excited about where this is heading?
Okay, I want to meet your friends who said there's money, because I want money.
Okay, I will
So,
facilitate
so
those
please,
introductions.
please, please make me meet your friends, because honestly, as a woman and a female director, I mean, I don't say that like that, but over time, I've also realized that a lot more money goes into supporting male directors or work that known people are doing. Um, so, I mean, no matter how many good plays I do, nobody's really come to me, or I haven't been able to go to anybody and say, can you
Fund this
sponsor
production or
or
sponsor it, yeah.
run this production? So my method has been to sort of crowdfund, or then, like I said, work in film or web or whatever, and literally just take that money and funnel it into the theater, my theater. Because over time also, Vineet, I've realized that I cannot depend on outside producers. If I want to create my work, if I want to tell the stories that I want to tell, the way I want to tell them, then I have to be able to fund that myself as well. Because a lot of organizations may say, yeah, sure, okay, we'll fund it, and then then be like, okay, no,
Not this, something
we're not
else.
paying the writer royalties. We will do this. So I'm like, if I want to cast the people I want to, because again, in theater, it cannot be like film, right? Like what is an A-lister in theater? I don't know. Is a film actor an A-lister in theater? And for me, theater cannot work like that. Theater has to be, for me, I will cast people who I think are right for that particular play or role, and that's why I do very extended auditions as well. Strictly Unconventional has really actually been very unconventional for me in some ways, because I didn't do all of that. I just cast a few close people because I didn't have time. I was also between Pondicherry and here because of my culinary diploma. But generally, I audition a lot of people and things like that, and I've lost a lot of money of my own savings, trying to make theater. So the for me, if somebody is saying, I mean, so there's like this, have you heard of Adyam? It's like this initiative where they fund like 5 new shows a year, for example.
Right.
Which of course started which is to fund new shows and new plays. But for example, when I presented Shikhandi twice, it was not accepted because, oh, it's mythology, it has to do with sexuality and this and that, we can't do that. So then it's again, where what are you then funding? Like, sure, then there's a particular kind of theater you want to do. Cool.
Sure.
Which, so for me, and over time, I've realized that as a woman in theater, it is much harder. It is much harder. You're proving yourself. You're trying to prove yourself all the time as a director, not as an actor. So as a writer also, I keep in mind that I want to have more female representation, other representation, except, besides cis male. But I will always be asked the question, as a female director, what do you feel as a female director? So I feel like that those things still bother me. You know what I mean? So even if you're saying in the last 10 years there have been, I mean, the thing is, the good thing is there's a lot of new contemporary Indian writing that's happening.
Right.
Which is really good, because I think, say, 20 years ago, people are still doing like Shaw and Shakespeare and this and that. And and it's great for studying and great for drama schools and, all of that. But I think at some point, for me also, it became very much about what are our stories, what are our realities.
Right.
Our realities are, we are not two couples about, it's always not about, a lot of like very Western first world problems have to do with relationships and two people in love. But I think our problems are real. Like, you have a housing society with 20 people. I love big casts, I can't afford it, but I think that's what our society is about. We have a lot of people around us all the time.
All the time,
That is
absolutely.
that is what our stories are about, the things that we are fighting for example. So I just feel, and our politics, and so I also, like, whatever, 10 years ago I adapt an American play, which was a series of short plays. But then I think for me, more and more, it's become about, no, I what am I relating to? What do I, as a watcher, relate to? I do relate to things that are immediate to me,
Happening around us, yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, I do, and I relate to it so strongly. So why are we stuck? I mean, even like when we do Shakespeare, I mean, the Shakespeare work that happens as translations or adaptations into Indian forms and languages becomes so successful because people just get it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so for me, more and more, it's about that. And I don't have the ability or the strength of writing in languages besides English.
Right.
So even my Hindi is very Bombaya in that sense.
Right.
But I know that language is a huge thing for us also, right? So Bone of Contention is multilingual. It's about people speaking in Gujarati, Marathi, Hindi, English. And those are, for me, the things that we relate to. So, and there's so much that you can relate to, right? And a lot of even Middle Eastern writers, like if you read their scripts also, you can totally connect with them because their issues and problems are so relatable.
Right.
So I feel like now people are really like looking for scripts beyond the American and the British scripts that people, 20 years ago we were doing a lot more of. And I feel that's amazing because it's so much more relatable, and it's us and our issues and our problems. And I don't say us and them, but I feel, of course, any script is, universal, blah, blah, blah. But there's so much spunk in our society. You know what I mean? There's so many things. You would never find like, a British or an American fighting over a goat or a cow. Or,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like, yeah.
I mean, absolutely.
Like,
The
you wouldn't fight about vegetarianism and non-vegetarianism, or like, like that level of classism and stuff that you will over here. Like, so I just feel like our society is so exciting. I mean,
it is. It's what you said, right? It's because there are so many people around us, the collective bleeds into the individual, and there's that leads to so much absurd scope for absurd humor and so much commentary. I think that's definitely very exciting especially for someone like me, right, who's also kind of sort of in my own consumption of stories come across this problem, which is, okay, all the books that I grew up reading are European or American, but the environment I'm living in is completely Indian. And I remember one of my professors being like, have you read Harishankar Parsai? Start there. He will give you a point of view and make you feel more connected. And I think, obviously, Parsai is still 60, 70 years ago now, but like you said, more and more contemporary stories coming out, I think, augurs well for the space. And I will take my friend to task for telling me that there's money in theatre. I'm pretty sure he's lying, or he was just trying to paint a rosy picture, or I will get him to meet you.
No, he might be right. But see, also funding for theatre goes on how much. See, theatre is not a business where you can mint money. But if you do a certain kind of theatre that is commercially viable, then yes, there is scope for making money and traveling and doing it, as dinner theatre, supper theatre. And of course, people are then going to put money on it. But the kind of work that I do is quite experimental. So there's no one. So if somebody puts money into it, they're just actually turning on the tap to like lose that money,
Sure.
literally. So I understand that. But honestly, I find it very hard to know who is willing to sponsor. I'm sure your friends look at, like for example, like stand up comedy, people would obviously put more money into that because as a single person,
Right.
there is a surety of like getting returns. So in experimental theater, or the theater that we call experimental, which means that you are actually, pushing the boundaries of things. You're not sort of going commercial and saying, okay, this is happy feed all, appeal to everybody. It is you're pushing you're pushing boundaries, not because you are an asshole, but because you this is
Want
what
to
you
take
want
it
to
further?
say.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the
Yeah.
expression that
So then it depends. Like for example, Shikhandi is very successful, but have I made much money off of it? No, I have not, because each show runs on the money that it makes. So if I put, say, I spend 2 lakhs on running 4 shows, and if I make those 2 lakhs back, I'm happy.
Right, right.
It's I will never sit there and be like, oh, I should now make 4 lakhs on it. I can't, because I'm doing it on the Prithvi stage. I'm not a famous film star, anybody on stage. I cannot price my tickets very high. So there are lots of the commercial aspect of the kind of theater that I do is actually people think we're stupid only because I am stupid if you think of it financially. So it's just literally taking the money I make in other from whatever web series and all, and then putting it into this and losing it. So I always feel happy for people who have sponsors, who have supporters, who have well wishers. My theater friends, if they're being supported, or like for example, they get an Adyam show, I'm really happy for them. I'm like, yeah, because you need that financial support, and somebody's giving it to you, which is what we need. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
But yeah, I think it's few and far between. Adyam is one of those very few that has done it. I think, I mean, there might be others, but if
We
I
will
start
find them
talking about
out.
other,
No. We will find this out. I have some thoughts on this, which I will share with you after we record. First, as we wrap this up, first of all, thank you so much. I think it was
no,
a
thank you.
super enjoyable chat, eye-opening, interesting. I wish you all the best for
Thank you. Thank
Strictly
you.
Unconventional going out. What are you hoping audiences take away from this at opening night tomorrow?
Yeah, it's always a very hard question to answer, Vineet, because you are putting your work out there for people to receive. And it's hopefully what they receive is something that will change something in their brains a little bit. If you were not accepting of certain kinds of visuals, for example, seeing 2 women on stage being intimate, for example, not that there are 2 women being intimate, but maybe you will start seeing that as a norm. Like in Hindi films, like I gave this example. It's very normal for a man to eve tease a woman, and then that being accepted as a way of wooing someone.
Yeah.
We've accepted that as a norm for some strange reason.
कब तक रूठेगी चीखेगी चिल्लाएगी दिल कहता है एक दिन हसीना मान जाएगी.
Correct. So now that is a negative way of accept, and you're given that all the time, so you think it's okay and it's accepted. In the same way, in a positive way, if you start giving representation to different kinds of coupling or different kinds of family structures or chosen families or whatever it is, like ways of life that we may think of as unconventional, is there some way to accept it without judging it? So I think for me, that it's representation and acceptance of relationship, because relationships everywhere are so unique. So you cannot say that all gay couples are like this, or all cishet people are like this, or all. So each relationship is so particular to itself that if you start accepting that universally, it won't really matter what gender, what sexuality, what anything anybody is. You just accept that 2 people are in love, and 2 people can be in love and deal with a lot of problems and still be happy, or whatever it is that you want. So I think for me, it's more about that. It's about these unconventional things that people have lives that people are living, unconventional, quote unquote. So I think the title itself is is a joke on itself, because what is conventional, what is unconventional, right? If but for us to be able to see that represented on stage and to also accept that as the norm, then we're getting somewhere. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So of course there are other things that each of the stories is talking about different things. Like a woman being very vocal about her sexual needs. And we talked about this in rehearsal, that if it were a man talking about, he wants to leave his wife because she's not sexually satisfying him, everybody would get it. Everybody would get it.
Right.
But if a woman is saying it with that much zest and passion, you might judge her.
Yeah.
And that's the scary part. But can you not judge her?
Right.
Can you not judge her and be like, this could be a man, woman, trans person, any person, non-binary, whatever, and not be getting what they want from a relationship and want to get out of it? Would you be able to? Yeah, would you be able to look at it the same way?
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole, the man is so virile, but the woman is a nympho. I mean, that's
Yes,
sad, right?
correct. And she says that. She says that of herself. She says, am I an info? Because it's so like
Ingrained.
inbuilt in us.
Yeah.
That as a woman, I cannot fulfill my sexual desires. I cannot want to be fulfilled sexually. If there's nothing wrong with my guy, really.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not fulfilling me.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask for this? Can I ask out of this? So, I mean, those are the things that we're kind of looking at. So I think these are much more slice of life, personal sort of relationship things of how we're looking at things versus larger pictures. I mean, of course, the larger pictures have a lot to do with everything, but even even my theater, just going back to what you mentioned in the beginning, environmentally speaking also, like my sets, we try to recycle wood, for example. We try to use stuff that is either biodegradable. I have a bioarchitect, actually, architect who designed my sets. But wherever we can, we recycle things, like even clothes. There was a show, Farming Story, where we took old clothes and sort of upcycled them into costumes. This show, we haven't really bought any clothes. Financials are one thing, but we could have just bought the normal clothes, but we just took it out of everybody's wardrobes, and our designer, Navneet, put it together. So the idea is, and it's a plastic free sort of set, so to speak, for us, so that we are not creating more waste and things like that. So even in our presentation, I mean, that's not something that you would know, but even like in Shikhandi, the set is bamboo, and those are things that we hope that either can be reused or then they're environmentally safe. We don't use thermocol or anything like that. And also, I've been very vocal about, asking other groups if they want to share costumes or props or anything like that, so that there is no extra waste or extra things bought. Even the things that we buy, we make sure that we absolutely need them before doing that. So I think on an environmental level, and as we know, the whole RA thing is back up again. We're really conscious about what we're doing. I'm very conscious about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want to have children because of the environment. So
one.
I think those are very strong things that it may not always be said in the play, for example, but it's the running of the show also has a lot to do with what I believe in environmentally and socially around people.
Absolutely love it. I think I'm so glad that you brought this up, because it struck me that we didn't talk about it thus far. But I'm so glad you're walking the talk with that, right? And also maybe not advertising it as much, which is, again, easier said than done. You've got multinational corporations telling you how to recycle now, and I mean, individual action in the face of industrial assault on the environment is just like, there's a ridiculous David with a toothpick and there's like Goliaths armed with Excaliburs here. It's not really working out, is it? But I love it. I love the fact that you've got that front and center. I love the fact that you're not just keeping it to yourself. You're also collaborating and bringing other groups into the fold. I think it's super important that while you're trying to normalize relationships and perspectives around it, you're also bringing to the fore through your efforts for the environment. I think it's something that more and more people should try and do in their daily
but
lives.
there are a group of theatre groups like Shaili Setu is also like, she's very much in the forefront. She's also started this whole thing of, she does it with her group, but she's also put a lot of us other groups in touch, where we're talking about what we're doing as a green policy within our theatre companies. So of course, you can never compare it with a film set where if everybody's using a plastic bottle, that's hazard. But we don't use, for example, my company, we don't use plastic bottles.
Right.
I tell people to carry their water bottles, carry a plate and fork and spoon. If you can't, then we do have biodegradable plates and stuff like that to use. But I really encourage people also to carry their own stuff. So even when I go on a film set, if I know that they're going to give us thermocol plates, I carry my own plate, and I also carry my own water bottle, because those are things for me that, okay, they're very small, and I can, like you said, it's the David Goliath thing, like the small thing that I'm doing while, there's a water company just producing plastic bottles. I don't know, does it even match? Are we just going to drown anyway? But I think...
No, you do what you can, man. I mean, I think...
You do what you can.
You do what you can, right? I mean, as long as your efforts let you sleep at night, for as long as you can sleep at night before Bombay drowns. But
before we drown,
yeah.
before there is no forest cover at RA, and we're just covered in smog and sea, and then we're destroyed. I'm very much
before we head into that post-apocalyptic future, we will enjoy Strictly Unconventional. We will.
Yeah, please do.
100%. Wonderful talking to you, Faezeh. Thank you so much for taking
Thank you,
time
Vineet.
out.
Thank you very much.
You can all catch Strictly Unconventional at Prithvi Theatre. Kicks off on the 7th of July. If you can tell us about how many shows you got.
7th of July, we have one show, and on the 8th, we have two shows. Shall I tell you about Shikhandi as well?
Oh, yeah, for sure. All of it.
Shikhandi is on Saturday and Sunday. So it's on the 9th and the 10th. There are two shows on each day. Both plays, in some way talk about gender, sexuality. So if you don't know much about it, come. If you know a lot about it also, please come. We love to hear from everybody. Perspective is always very good. So, yeah.
Go check those plays out. Great conversation with Faezeh Jalali. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vineet.
This was an episode of Storytellers and Storysellers. You were listening to me, Vineet Kanabar. The show is produced by the good folks at IBM. Thank you to Saurav and the team for putting this together. What are you waiting for?
Yes, thank you everybody who put it together.
That's it. This is me, Vineet Kanabar, saying goodbye.